Hello there, and welcome to Mission Unstoppable 2021. I hope you all had a safe and happy Christmas, and you're still healthy. I hope that didn't catch up with you. COVID is still with us, but hopefully you're, near to getting a vaccine, and we can say goodbye to this. You can certainly say goodbye to Trump. As you guys know, I can't stand him, so I'm really happy to say goodbye to him, even though I don't even live in that country. I'm still very happy to do that. I have a very special guest today, and I'm really excited to introduce him to you. His name is Martin Cooper. He is a Prince of Asturias laureate. Do you know what that is? Yeah, it's an award given out by the Princess of Spain for individuals and entities and organizations from around the world who make notable achievements in the sciences, humanities, and public affairs. He was named by Time magazine as one of the 100 best inventors in history. He's a lifetime member of the IEEE. He was president of its Vehicular Technology Society, and he received its Centennial Medal. The Radio Club of America awarded him a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2010. And in 2013, Marty became a member of the National Academy of Engineering, from whom he received the Charles Stark Draper Prize for Engineering. He was awarded the Marconi Prize for being a wireless visionary, excuse me, who reshaped the concept of mobile communication. And he has been inducted into the Consumer Electronics Hall of Fame and Wireless History Foundation's Wireless Hall of Fame. Martin Cooper is an engineer. He's an inventor, an entrepreneur, a futurist, and now an author of Cutting the Cord. The Cell Phone Has Transformed Humanity. A fabulous book, and we're going to talk about his book, and I hope that you're going to go out and get it right away, because it's going to be a very exciting read for you. Marty is known as the father of the cell phone, and he led the creation of the world's first cell phone at Motorola, and he made the first public call on a cell phone in New York City on April 3rd, 1973. Yeah. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Thank you for having me, Frankie.
What do you think when you hear all of that? Like, wow, I did all that?
Well, we don't have much more to say. You encapsulated my entire life in a couple of sentences. But,
no, well, let's go back though. We're going to go back. Like, there's so much more than just the technology to you. You were on a submarine. You were in the Navy. And before that, you were a kid growing up in Winnipeg and Chicago. And so where did you prefer? Canada to the US? Where's your heart?
Oh, well, I like wherever I am, Frankie. The location is not important. What you're doing is not important. It's the people that are important. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have met so many wonderful people in my life that for which I'm extraordinarily grateful. And of course, you're one of them.
Oh, you are such a charmer. What can I say? Your mom was an entrepreneur. She sold corsets in Chicago and other places.
My mother was selling her entire life. And she actually, my folks started a number of businesses, all of which failed at the beginning. You can find all those details out of my book. But
that's right.
But she finally became what's called an installment dealer. She used to go out, take a train out into the suburbs, and she'd go to house, carrying a rug under her arm, and she'd offer to sell this to the people in the house on the installment plan, 50 cents a week. And once she created that relationship, she sold them everything. The people bought their clothes, their furniture, everything from her. And she created relationships where we went to their weddings, they went to our bar mitzvahs. And
wow. What year was that, Marty? What year did the installment plan start?
Oh, holy smoke. Well, I was, let's see. Well, it was 80 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Whoever thought that 80 years ago we were doing credit?
That's exactly, you got it. That was the beginning of credit. That's exactly right.
How amazing is that? Wow. Good for her. I love it. I love when I hear, women's story, women out there doing their things. That's really cool.
My mother was a dynamo. She was, even when she was in her late 80s, she got a job, would you believe it, a dress job.
Oh my gosh. God bless her. Yeah.
She was a dynamo, and I was very lucky to have her.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great memory to have, and wonderful that you had such a great mom as a role model for you, and especially for you because of who you are and the way that you think. And you know, you talk about, and I really hate it as much as you do, talking about outside the box, the box. You know, I never thought about a box. I just thought. And I thought differently, and you think differently than other people, and you know, inventors and futurists, they have to think differently than other people. And you know, you got yourself into a career in electronics, but it could have been anything, I think, for you, and you still would have succeeded, and you would have failed a million times like you did, because that's the only path to success, is to fail. Don't you
Yeah,
think?
that took me a long time to figure that out, Frankie, but I think you're exactly right. It doesn't matter what you do. You have the energy and the curiosity and the willingness to accept failure. That's the hardest part of all, you know.
It is.
The worst part of being a salesperson is accepting rejection.
That's true.
And I don't do that very well.
I didn't. I didn't until I put game into it. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to get 9 no's and then I'm going to get a yes. So it's like cross, 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 cross. Yes, yay. I'm going to get a sale. The law, it says you have to. The law of averages says you're bound to, right? So you're going to go with it. So what I love about, what I loved about your book, and I liked about the thinking of your book, is that you look at technology as a form of expression for humanity. And you know, I remember being in the government, and the cell phones we were using the technology a little bit. This was in the 90s, and we were talking about ethics. You know, this whole thing of ethics came up, and because people were, you know, couldn't use a cell phone to buy a pop at the vending machine, and you can use, you know, the cell phone to do all kinds of things. But you know, where does ethics come in? And now you can take pictures and videos of people on the street. Before, you know, as a journalist, you used to have to go get a signed release to take somebody's picture. So people are doing all kinds of things with their phone. Did you ever think about where they would be today, addicted to the phone?
No, no, you know, there's so many things about the phone that we could not have imagined. You know, if I take it back to 1973, these are primitive times. There was no digital camera. The personal computer had not been invented, and the internet was just a scientific curiosity used by scientists specifically.
Yeah.
There were no integrated circuits, you know, these things that allow us to put computers into a cell phone. So these were really primitive times, and what we built was a telephone, and that was it. It had actually an address book built into it, because as you noticed in my book, when I made that first phone call, I had to go to a paper list of telephone numbers, because was the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So our phone did have one futuristic feature, but telephoning was the issue, and we were convinced that someday everybody would have a phone like this, because we had discovered, because we were in the two-way radio business. We built all the police radios and the fire department and businesses. And when we finally could, all of these radios, two-way radios, were built into cars. And we finally figured out how to make one that you could hold in your hand. We discovered an amazing thing, that we made a holster so people could put these things on their belt. Nobody used them. They had
Yeah.
them in their hands.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
that give you an idea of the vision that we had? People are mobile.
Yeah.
People want to move around. They want to stay connected. And so we finally figured that out. My boss taught me that, and it became part of my basic culture. And so when the opportunity came to come up with this thing where everybody could have a phone, and then the phone company, which was then a monopoly, Ma Bell, came along, and they said, yeah, but we're going to make this telephone that everybody can talk on, and it's going to be wired into the car. We said, you know, that's ridiculous. This is the future.
Yeah.
That's when we took on the Bell system. They were the biggest company in the world by every measure. And we're this little company in Chicago. Well, we were $1 billion, but that was trivial compared to the Bell system. And we approached the FCC, at the Federal Communications Commission. They control who can be on the airwaves, who has television spectrum, who has radio programs. And we told them, first of all, this new service should be competitive. It should not be a monopoly, because monopolies are slow, stodgy, and they are not in the interest of the public. And second of all, we said the world is ready for personal communications, not car telephones.
Yeah, yeah.
It took us almost 15 years to persuade the FCC that this was the way to go. And it was a continuing battle, because AT&T, the phone company, didn't give up. That's the old AT&T, it's not the new one.
Like you worked at Motorola for 30 years, pretty much. And like, was it like 10 or 15 years? I mean, you were just talking about the spectrum and like that whole argument about who owned it and who's going to get the airwaves, and AT&T wanted the whole thing, and you've kept fighting. No, it's not right. Like and there's enough for everybody, and there's still more to go around. So for one person to own it, it should be public domain. That was your fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of battles, but you've encapsulated it all very well.
Oh, thanks.
What we need to talk about the rest of the time. But,
there's lots to talk about. You know what I found fascinating, because my daughter's going to be a police officer soon, and you talked about the communication device that they wore on their shoulder, and that it hit the window in the car because there was no steel or anything to impact on the airwaves, so it got like a better communication. Did I get that right?
Boy, you really captured. You should have been in it. You probably are an engineer.
No, I don't have an engineer mind, but it was. I liked reading it. I told you I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, there are so many issues that all came together. You wonder whether these things can all be that serendipitous. Because it's not. That's the reason. When I started the book, all I wanted to talk about was that story about the Bell system. And I realized that everything comes together. This whole thing about the radio spectrum, the technology, my mother, entrepreneurship, it's all one big picture. It's not a bunch of isolated things. They all connect. In fact, you really are stimulating, Frankie, because I have a lot more time to think now than I had in the old days. Everything in the universe is connected to everything else. It's true in your body. People keep trying to cure diseases of this and that. Don't they understand that everything in your body is connected to everything else, and your brain is controlling everything? And that's what I loved about when I did the research on your program.
Oh yeah.
Your whole mission is feeling good.
Well, social impact is very important to me. I like the idea of social impact. So I really, I hope and I love when I can meet people and companies who think about having corporate responsibility and helping other people through what they make with their own company, whether it's directly, related to what they do or not. Like I paint, but money goes to pay for cleft palate surgery, or, so different things like that. And like Bell, talking about Bell has, Let's Talk. So they have the kids helpline, and they talk to people with mental health problems, which is, a huge program for them and really, really necessary. So I love that about them. But there's lots of companies today that think about social impact, and a lot of entrepreneurs, who start B companies and who think about, how can I help first, and then, what I'm going to do with my company. So we've come a long way.
Well, we haven't talked about my wife.
No, let's talk about her.
But she's is probably one of the best engineers that I've ever known. She never more than just a few courses in college. She
Really?
has not a college degree, but she is an inventor. She has a number of patents. And one of the issues, she's like you. She's got a bunch of tendrils going out. And one of them is working on what she calls respectful technology. It is respecting other people's privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the big issues that goes on now. If people are respectful of other people, you don't have any problems. Well, it turns out that not everybody is, and we haven't figured out how to handle privacy, and we haven't figured out how to handle people that are abusing the privilege of being able to communicate with everybody else. So they're.
But Marty, don't you think it was funny? I remember it was 1987, 88, because I was in the grocery store with my kids. It was probably one of the first times I actually really saw somebody walking around the grocery store, talking on their cell phone and shopping. And I'm looking, I got 3 kids because I had twins. I had 3 kids in my cart, and I see this, this woman talking in the grocery store on her phone. And I looked at her and I thought, do you really need to have your phone in the grocery store? Like, can't you just like walk away for like a minute and get off the phone? My first thought. And I'm like the biggest technology user in the world today. I just love it. But it was kind of interesting that was my first thought. That can't you unplug for just a minute? But today, yeah, you don't. But we were talking about privacy, and people who talk on their cell phones in public act like nobody else is around can hear them. Yeah. It's hilarious. Don't you think?
And they yell into their cell
phone. And they yell, yeah.
We work so hard to make technology so you can whisper. And they are yelling and completely oblivious of the fact that they're intruding on other people's space.
Yeah.
It's every time you make a change in a culture, it takes time for the culture to absorb this change. The cell phone's been around really, even though it was 40 years ago that we did the first phone call, but it really, as you pointed out, it took until the 90s before it became widespread. So it's only been around for half a generation. In the next generation, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
People are smart. They'll figure out how to get together, how to treat each other respectfully.
I hope so. I hope so. I really love the part, how your thinking went into bridging the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I know when you go around the world, because my husband has family in Thailand, and it's very, very cheap to make a phone call from Thailand. It's very expensive for us to call Thailand on our cell phone, but it's very, very cheap for them to call out of the country. And a lot of those countries, it's the same. So it allows people to have internet and have, be in touch with the world that normally wouldn't have, access to the world. And that's what you were going with, I think.
Oh, you bet. It turns out that we kind of get hung up on the smartphone. We think that that's the picture of what cellular telephony is. And that's not at all. If you look at the rest of the world, there are billions of people that have moved out of poverty just because the cell phone is around there. There are health services that are being provided to people. The people are getting educated. And so now it has become very important that everybody have a cell phone. And of all things, in the place where, we live in this wonderful society where people have these amazing things, we have a divide, we call it the digital divide, where there are 40% of the people in the United States don't have enough internet capacity, wireless internet capacity, to do education and to do healthcare and all of these things. We got to fix that problem. And we have a situation now where the carriers are investing in what's called 5G. You've heard of that?
Yeah.
5G means super high speeds, low latency. Well, when was the last time you had a problem, Frankie, with super high speed and low latency? What we need in this country, those things are good for the future, but what we need right now is to solve this digital divide problem. And that problem is solved with 2 things. One is lower cost. Everybody's got to be able to afford it. And the second is coverage. Right now, if you live out in the hinterlands, in the farm areas in the mountains, there's no cellular coverage.
Yeah. I mean, even where I live, and I live in a city, my son, one of my kids, he has like very cheap internet. cell phone, like $30 a month or something. But everywhere he goes, he's not always guaranteed of service. Even at my house, he kind of doesn't get service. And I'm wired to the hilt here. I don't know why he doesn't get it, but it's kind of interesting. But I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a little story because it might interest you. I had a guest on the show a couple years ago, and she was a young girl. She graduated university, and she took the phone and connected it to food banks. And so her program was, if you ate at a restaurant and your bill was $12.79, and they say, would you round it up to $13? And then automatically that difference, if they said yes, would go to the food bank from the phone, bing, right over there. I thought that was brilliant. I love that idea. I think everybody, I can't imagine why everybody wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's creative. There are lots of opportunities like that. So, and by the way, you mentioned this thing about the cost, the $30 being a low cost phone. In India, you can get internet service, wireless internet service for $5 a month.
In India?
Yeah, and here it's $60.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the disparity? Why is it so expensive here and so inexpensive? Because we can pay it. Is that why?
Yeah, well, partly that, and partly they're investing into 5G, and 5G is going to be important 5 or 10 years from now. But there's a question of priorities, don't you think?
There is, and people are talking. Let's talk about 5G for a moment, because there is that question mark around it, that it's going to cause cancer, it's going to cause all kinds of disease. Now, is 5G going to do that, or is it just hype?
No, that's hype.
Okay.
We've been studying this problem of the radio waves, and do they affect your body? And we've been studying that for when I was a young engineer, almost 100 years, and there has been no scientific evidence that the radio waves have any effect on your body at all, unless you get super high power, in which they can in fact addle your brain. But a cell phone puts out a fraction of a watt. It would take hundreds of watts of energy to do that. So the chances of radio waves affecting you are not insignificant. But the issue of 5G is really just what we talked about. It's what are the priorities? What's more important? Having everybody have the benefits, and I really mean those. My 3 big issues are education, number 1.
Yeah.
You just mentioned, I don't want to talk about our past administration. I guess they're still the present administration.
For a couple more days.
If we could educate people and make people understand things, how much better world we would have. And the future of education is having every child have access to all of the knowledge in the world all the time.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. And when I started this show, when I started the Good Media Network, it was really, I really felt compelled to base upon United Nations global goals. And those global goals, by 2030 are supposed to be fulfilled by 193 countries who all voted yes. There wasn't anybody who said no. And that was education. Everybody deserves the right to education. Everybody deserves, the right to eat. Everybody deserves, all of these 18, 19 goals. So, I can take it back there and say, let's address it. Let's address it, all you people who said yes. And you've got a plan for that, Marty.
Yeah, well, you bet. There's a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of human needs.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of this pyramid, you've got the basic things: food, water, survival.
Yeah.
And it's my view that in the future of the world, wireless access is as important as food and
shelter
and water.
So what's the key then? Is it more towers? Like what's it going to take to get people connected?
Only the desire to do that, believe it or not. You know that yourself. When in your life, what is it that has made you achieve things? You decide you're going to do something and you go and do it.
Yeah.
And if the carriers had that priority, and I think I haven't figured out how yet, but if we can get the priorities established right, they could do both. They could do 5G and also get the coverage and cost down to so that everybody has access to this.
You know, one of
And
my favorite guys was Edward de Bono. He's the father of creativity. And you know, they always talk about asking the least experienced person in the room the question, and they go, well, you know, they're going to come up with a dumb answer. No, they might come up with the right answer because they don't have any proclivity to, you know, I don't know what's right or wrong, so I'll just throw out there what I think. And I love that. I love that because usually they have great ideas.
yeah, well, since you brought that up, I'll tell you the thing that I'm most proud of that I have created. Uh, I created the saying that the best way to get people to think out of the box is to not create the box in the first place.
Right.
Look that up in the on the internet.
I want to talk about Cooper's law because I can't quote it. So let's talk, because you created that too. We'll bring it in there. Why not?
Well, you captured everything in my book. I don't know how you it, but you mentioned before this issue of the radio spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what we do is auction off the radio spectrum. Congress has stated that we will decide who can have a radio station, who can have a TV station, who can offer cellular service, and they auction off that right and give people exclusive use of a piece of the radio band, of radio channels. Well, it turns out that they say that the reason we do that is because radio spectrum is scarce. It isn't scarce. We somehow or other, they said it was scarce 120 years ago when Marconi invented radio. And the technologists come along and they figure out how to let more information go through the same amount of spectrum. And that's when I finally figured out what they now call Cooper's law. I call it the law of spectral capacity, that every time we fill up the radio spectrum, these smart engineers come along and figure out how to allow more stuff to go through. We make it bigger. So the spectrum is not scarce. What makes it scarce is that the Congress limits who can access it. They make it exclusive. So that's a huge, huge mistake. If people understand that the spectrum is infinite in capacity, let the engineers keep working it and making it more and more powerful and focus on the important things. What does the spectrum do for people? It makes people more productive, which means you solve poverty. It makes people smarter because you solve the education problem. It makes people healthier because you connect with their bodies. You can measure their bodies and kill disease before it ever happens. Boy, aren't those things the most important?
Amazing.
About people.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I love the idea of the cell phone and the well, you talked about the spectrum, but you also talked about everybody who has a cell phone has a private little lane, little highway of their own when they're talking on the phone. Like, you know, we used to have the landlines where, you know, people would come in and they would cross. You know, I lived on a farm and, you know, people down the street, you pick up the phone, they'd be on your line, you know, get off the line, I have to make a call. But, you know, now we've got dedicated, if I get on my phone, I have a dedicated space just for me.
That's exactly right. You do have it. Theoretically, you have a private channel that's all your own, and you should be able to control it and decide who can hear you and who cannot hear you.
So am I actually buying that when I buy my plan or my phone or whatever, when I pay for it? Am I buying my little piece of the highway?
Well, you do that, but then you get on Facebook and Twitter and all that, and you give up all that privacy and you let everybody.
That's true. That's true.
So,
yeah.
So you got to make up your mind, Frankie. You want privacy? You want to be connected.
I'm an open book, Marty. I don't care. I'm an open book. But, you know, I like to have a private conversation, except when I'm here talking to people like you. Then I like to talk about all of it.
Well, you want control. You want to be able to decide when you're private and when you're not. And you're into that.
Well, you know, it's interesting because it doesn't matter if it's the phone or if it's Alexa or whoever is in the room when you're talking. If I talk about a football, I'm going to talk about football for a minute, and I can guarantee you I'm going to have an ad for something related to football later today.
Oh, yes.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed. I don't talk about football, but I will have I don't even like it, but I'll have an ad for it because I brought it up.
Yeah.
They're going to think I want it. But I love the idea, like you talked about, AI coming. And I was this kid who loved the Jetsons. The Jetsons was it for me. And every day I see the Jetsons come into life now in my lifetime. And I never thought I would. And all that's left for me is my little private air car. I cannot wait to have that little air car
Yeah.
and just come into my house. Like that'll be it for me. But everything, the Roomba and the maid and the robot and the oven and the cell, all of that stuff is here.
It is
People like
here.
you brought it.
And would you believe it's going to keep going, Frankie? Whatever you dreamed about with the Jetsons, the next generations will find that to be every day, but they'll have their own version of the Jetsons, future things that we can't even imagine now. They've got this concept of quantum computing, the ability to connect people at distances that are astronomical. So we have no
Crazy.
idea what's going to happen in the future. The one thing for sure is that people in the future, when they communicate the way you and I are now, there will be no difference between doing this Zoom call that we're on and being in the same room with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be able to reach out and touch them. Uh,
It's crazy.
yeah, so this is going to keep going, and we just hope that we keep it under control so that things happen in the interest of people and not in the interest of the baddies.
Well, I have to tell you, Marty, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter and a 14-month-old granddaughter, and they got fake cell phones at Christmas in a purse. And the whole time during Christmas, they were like on their phone calling each other. Not really calling each other, but like they knew what to do. They knew how to use it. It's crazy. Their favorite toy. It's
You
like
had a 2-year-old getting a toy
it
cell phone.
it came in a little purse, right? It's like she has a makeup kit, she has a cell phone, she has some keys, but it played like a little tune or something. Because I Zoom with them like a lot. I Zoom with all my grandkids a lot, and so
You
they
know
know.
what that's causing, Frankie, for us. I hate to use the old word, but us the older people, is that these kids grow up with that technology.
They know how to do it.
It
They
comes
already know how to do it.
intuitive, inherent in them, and people like us will never really catch up to them.
I used to be afraid to swipe. I'm like, oh, what if I do it wrong? Now I'm like the queen. Yeah. But even my father, my dad, who's going to be 96 this year, I think, embraced technology. He has his iPad, he has his cell phone, he's got his this, he's got his that, he's got his smart. He loves it. He bought into it. He gets it. Not everybody gets it, but if you love it, you love it. And I love it.
Yeah. I think you just demonstrated again, we have the same genes. If I was 96, I'm 92, and I'm still active, and
I love it. I love it.
And I'm thinking that's the most important thing.
That is the most important thing.
I bet your father's been doing that all his life, this thinking and encountering challenges and solving problems.
Yeah, now he's playing the stock market. Like he's learning how to do that. But he restarted a business in his 70s. I think he gave it up in his mid 80s. But yeah, I mean, you guys are very similar. I told you, I feel like, simpatico here. I'm going to send you his book. I'm going to send that to you. I'm going to get your address after. I'm going to send you the book I wrote about him because I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm not sure I like the idea of
giving your address to me?
me as the father. Here I thought we were compatriots, and now you're treating me like
now there's years between us. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, there's Harriet. But, yeah. Quality service was really important. I worked at the government in cabinet office, and I was in charge of quality service. And Bell was one of those companies that always had quality service. And Bell was a company where you could go 99.9%. I'm going to pick up this phone and I'm going to have service. Yeah. That was important. That's important to people, to be able to rely on their service.
Yeah. that is one of the problems now. The bell system has done, or the carriers have done a good job in the cities and in various places, but they still got a ways to go because something over 20% of the people in this country don't have access for one reason or another. And that's a lot of people when cellular service is so important in so many different ways. And the technology exists to solve that problem. And instead of focusing on that technology, they're focusing on technology that's going to run factories in the future, and that's going to run self-driving cars, they say. I'm skeptical of that. And that's going to let you get an operation remotely.
You're skeptical of a self-driving car? You shock me.
In the short term.
Oh, okay.
Turns out it's a big problem, much bigger than anybody imagined. Because my wife drives a self-driving car.
Oh, does she?
Oh, she wouldn't think of letting that car drive itself.
But what about park itself? Does she let it park itself?
No, she's going to be in control. She's a very good parker.
She's an engineer.
That's right. She doesn't need a computer telling her what to do. No, it turns out the human mind is very powerful, and the kinds of situations that a car runs into are infinite. You can't predict them all. There will be accidents with self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, well, we'll decide at one point that the cars are smarter than people. Well, I don't think people could accept that very quickly. So the technology has got quite a ways to go yet before we could have self-driving cars in all situations. I think that in downtown areas, they're going to have taxis taking you from one place to another in places where there's not snow and ice on the roads.
Yeah. I mean, Highway 5 in California, man, like that's the boringest highway ever. I'd rather do anything but drive it, you know? I could see a self-driving car there, but they're packed. I mean, it's just packed, right?
You got it. You're so smart. You got all these things figured out. Why do you need guests? Why do you need guests?
Why do I need guests? Oh, because you spark the imagination. Hey, I wouldn't know any of this if I didn't read your book.
Yeah.
No, you've got it's a great book. I really love it. And I love that you have this rich history and legacy to leave, you know, your family and the world. Look at all the accolades and the awards that you've won, and that's amazing to have that.
Well, that's not why I wrote the book.
No, you didn't, but you know, it's important to be recognized for the jobs that you do, and you were recognized, and that's pretty cool.
Well, I was very fortunate, and I'm very pleased about that. But it wasn't me that did all these things. It was a whole bunch of other people.
Of course, but you know, when you lead a team, or you're the guy that sparks the fuel, you know, you brought the vision, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I could do it, and you're like, oh, we're gonna do it. And then you start, you know, you get this guy excited, and then you get that guy excited, and pretty soon you got a team, and they're all, we can do this. Yeah, we can do this, because the impossible is only, you know, I say I specialize in the impossible. I am possible, right? Like that's the impossible. I am possible, and I love that when people say it's impossible. Like my dad said something to me when I was a little girl, and to me, it sparked my creativity, because he had money. But he goes, what can you do without money? Show me what you can do without money. Yeah. And that was like, yeah, okay, I'll show you. I loved it.
Yeah. It turns out that within the bounds of science, the things you can do when you make up your mind are just amazing. And we just had a demonstration of it. The vaccine thing.
Yeah.
You know, right? You know, up until recently, it took 10 years to create a vaccine, or longer, and they did it in a matter of months. I can't express to you what an achievement that was. And it's a demonstration that if you put your mind to something,
yes,
if you decide that something is important, and gather the right kinds of minds together and take the obstacles away, you can do virtually anything.
And you know what, Marty, I think that they have a cure for cancer. I think they've had it for a very long time, because a lot of minds and a lot of money has gone into it. And I think that there's just money in it. And unfortunately, when there's money in things, cures don't come about.
Well, we're going to solve the cancer problem too, because you know, the nature of cancer is that all cancer, we have cancer in our bodies now, and our immune system handles that cancer. And the only time the cancer becomes a problem is when your immune system loses control and the cancer cells start multiplying. Well, it turns out that if you have a device on your body that can find those out of control cancer cells and you catch them before they start
multiplying,
getting out of control, you can zap them and there will be no cancer. Would you believe that that is the vision of what the ultimate cell phone is?
I love that. I read that. I love that.
And it's going to find those bad cancer cells and there will be no more disease. Could you visualize that?
I can. I can totally visualize that. I just sent my dad a watch that, you know, tells him his oxygen level and his, you know, heart rate and is this and is that. And I thought, yeah, you know what, like that's important to know. So I can see that. And I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And people are going to, you know, people are going to read your book and who are engineers and inventors, and they're going to be inspired to see how far they can take what you started.
Yeah.
That's
well,
exciting.
I really appreciate all the plugs for the book. I really do. If I could inspire people, that's the whole purpose of this book, to tell this story and make people realize what can happen if you put
I'm
your
going to
mind.
say the name of your book again. It's Cutting the Cord. The Cell Phone Has Transformed Humanity. And what do you think the cell phone can do for our environment? Because that's like a really big issue. I mean, we got to leave this planet. We got to make sure we can, you know, keep this planet for our children and our children's children. And you've got great grandchild. So, you know, what do you, if you put your mind to it now in your next 10 years, what do you think you're going to accomplish?
Yeah, well, if people think that we can save the planet and do all these other things, and the only way you can do that is to increase productivity. People worry about the menial jobs being taken over by robots. Just think about when that happens. We're letting the machine do these things. We're increasing the amount of wealth in the world, and everybody is going to get richer. And that's my dream, that we eliminate the whole idea of people being richer or poorer. There is enough in the way we think about the future world. If you get the productivity high enough, wealth will not be an issue.
Yeah.
There will be enough wealth for everybody to have everything that they need. There is that much capacity in the world.
I believe that. I think part of the problem is, you know, especially in the US, and I'm going to say this, and I think I can fairly say this because I've lived in both countries, but a lot of the people in the US don't travel. And when they do travel, they want everything to be like the US. You know, I want the same hamburger and I want the same experience at home that when I go away. However, you know, menial jobs are for other people, for the people who you know, they think of as the uneducated and the unwashed or whatever, but they're not. You know, you got brilliant people in every country in the world. And sometimes, you know, you see people and you think, oh, and they, you know, they end up being the Nobel Prize winner. So, you know, looks and country and all of that stuff is meaningless. It's brain power. And if you allow somebody to get educated, it's amazing, you know, what that can do for them. So it doesn't matter where you come from, because brilliant people come out of everywhere. And that's always been documented. So yeah, if the computers and the AIs and whatever of the world take over which is actually amazing, because I have a friend who worked at Chrysler on the plant line doing the widget thing, and you had to have a university degree to get on that line.
Oh, is that right?
They won't hire you without it. And so, like, he had a political science degree or something. And I thought, how can somebody with a political science degree be happy doing this all day long? But they have to have it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, those jobs are no longer. One of the issues that you didn't bring up is the question of diversity. The fact that
well, I was just trying to bring that up in a different way, but diversity, yes.
but everybody is different from everybody else. And it's that combination of differences that makes us, the humanity, so powerful. That you put it all together and, I guess we're repeating ourselves. You can do anything.
Well, but isn't it, because sometimes people think people with an accent, if they don't speak English without an accent, then they're not smart. Or, I grew up around a lot of people with a lot of accents, and, people, I can't understand them. I can understand them. Maybe they can't understand you because you don't speak proper. Who knows? But, this diversity, like I love diversity, and I'm a big proponent of diversity. In Canada, multiculturalism and diversity is kind of our theme here. But I guess where I was going with it, though, is that no matter where you live in the world, brilliance can come from it. Just like that movie about that little African boy who, figured out the wind, how the wind could cycle electricity. And look, you've got wind farms everywhere in California now, right?
Yep.
Crazy. Yeah.
So you don't feel like a Canadian. How come you don't have a Canadian accent?
Well, thank you for saying that, because I always get teased that I do have one, but I don't know. Maybe when I talk to somebody from the US, I start sounding like them. I'm kind of a mimic. I take after my father that way. Yeah. Well, Marty, what else do we need to talk about your book? Oh, I want to talk about the crystal. That was super interesting. Let's talk about that for a minute. The quartz crystal. What happened with that? I found that fascinating.
Really? Well, you really are an engineer, because quartz as a material, I don't know if people know what quartz is. Technically, quartz is what's called silicon dioxide. It's the same material as glass. In fact, it looks like glass, except that quartz is in a crystalline form. It's actually appears in nature. We dig it up out of the ground, and it looks like beautiful crystals.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
It's formed under high pressure. It happened 1 billion years ago when the Earth was being formed, but it has some very interesting characteristics. For example, if you take a piece of quartz and scrape it, it emits light. People don't know that, but you get in a dark room with a piece of quartz and scrape it. Quartz, it's also what's called piezoelectric. That's one of the things we engineers do, is pick up fancy words to
in
make
other languages.
People think we're so smart. Yeah. But if you take a little bar of quartz and bend it, it creates electricity. And if you apply electricity to this bar of quartz, the quartz will bend.
Okay. So the quartz was important in the transistor. Is that?
Yeah, it turns out that, and quartz, by the way, when you bend it, it always comes back to its original shape.
Oh.
And so we end up with a quartz. I'm trying not to use fancy words.
Use it.
But you make this, if you make a piece of quartz vibrate, it'll keep vibrating indefinitely.
Really?
And with just a tiny bit of electricity to keep it going. And it will always vibrate at the same exact frequency. And it turns out that quartz crystals are what make almost all of our electronic devices work, that require a constant frequency. So every cell phone's got a quartz crystal in it. Every radio's got a quartz crystal in it.
So what was the deal about you having to have this special room built for the crystal? What happened?
Well, it turns out in the old days of two-way radios, we used quartz crystals. And if the quartz crystal got dirty, or if it got wet, it would start moving in frequency and the radio would work.
Okay, got it.
And somehow or other, we made measurements. We were building these crystals and making the two-way radios, and our customers were complaining. And I went in and studied the results of our testing, and it turns out my results said, "Oh, we're making these things the same way we always did." Well, it turns out we were always making them wrong. When I dug into it further, it turns out our quartz crystals were changing with time, and our customers were having problems. And so I decided that we were going to take the extreme, the other extreme. We built a room that was absolutely perfectly clean. This is before the transistor, so people didn't even know you could build a room like that. And we started building perfect quartz crystals and solved the problem. So this is the first time that the management decided that maybe Marty Cooper could do something more than just build radio circuits.
So, they talk about crystals being healing and healing people, and they use the vibration of the crystal to heal people. And in certain quantum work and things like that. So I'm looking at you and you got this great head of hair, and I'm wondering, like, is it being around the crystal all those years that, you kept you had such good hair? Like, I'm wondering.
Well, I hate to say this when you've been so nice to me, Frankie, but I'm not into the woo-woo stuff. I think.
How could you be? You're an engineer.
Yeah. But I have loads of quartz crystals around, and I could show you here because I think they're beautiful.
They are beautiful. My husband loves them too. Yeah.
And the idea that you could take something starting with a few molecules and keep growing it, and it always grows into the same shape. Quartz always grows into the same pattern of facets, and there are many other kinds of crystals. Salt is a crystal, and it always grows into little cubes. So, and that's fascinating to me from a technical point of view. But listen, if you believe something strongly enough, and you let your mind use that power, then you're right. So I'm not going to argue with you about.
Okay, Marty. So as a futurist, your future projection for the cell phone is?
First of all, I want you to know I think this cell phone is very suboptimal. It's not a very good phone because I got to hold it up here. You notice? See my arm in this awkward position? This phone's flat. My face is round. So I know what an optimal phone is. An optimal phone would be an earring, or maybe it would be under my skin.
Right.
And it would have a computer, and I would say, "Get Frankie on the phone for me," and the computer would say, "Which Frankie do you want? Do you want
the only one?"
If it was the only one, there we'd be talking to each other.
Yeah. No.
That to me is an optimum phone.
Yeah.
But how about the visual things? Look at the size of the screen. I've got a 65-inch screen, and Arlene would like me to have an 80-inch screen instead of 65.
I just got a 65 for Christmas.
Well, we're going to figure out a way where you can have a personal device where when you look at it, you will see a 65-inch picture. Ultimately, what you will see is a 3D something that will look just like.
Right, it projects out.
So we are going to start moving into, first of all, more technology, more important, custom. We said before, every person in the world, maybe in the universe, if there are other people around, is different from every other person. And Apple says, you all want the same phone, exactly the same phone. Of course, you can customize it. All you got to do is look at these 2 million apps that we have and pick out the right ones.
Right.
Well, forget it. The customization is going to be whatever you need. The devices on your body that know what your genome is, know what diseases you're susceptible to, so they'll be looking for those diseases, know what you're interested in doing with regard to communications. You will have a phone that's designed for you, and it won't look like a phone. It's going to be devices spread around your body. You'll have something on your body that will connect to the outside world, but it will be truly customized to you. And as far as the applications are concerned, you will have your own private artificial intelligence that will look at your habits all the time, decide what you're doing and what you need to make yourself comfortable, and it will find the app for you. And if there's not an app there, it will create one for you. So, and its whole purpose is to make you more productive, more comfortable, more healthy, smarter.
And
So
on that note, what else is there to say? That's amazing. I love that. I love that future. I want that future.
the biggest problem we got, Frankie, is we keep calling this thing a phone. If that isn't the craziest thing that I can imagine, it's not a phone at all. It is. It is a. I haven't figured out the name yet, but maybe your listeners can come up with some ideas of what we should call this thing when it is doing so many things to make your life better.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Marty, thank you so very much for being my guest today. You've given us so much food for thought. And I mean, it makes, I'm not going to say it, but just giving us so much food for thought. And I really, really appreciate you being, Marty's book again is Cutting the Cord. And that's available on Amazon, I'm going to assume, and Barnes and Noble and all the usual suspects. Do you have a website?
Yeah, MartyCooper.com. You can,
Okay.
and all that will do is tell you how to buy my book. So,
All right. That's all they need to do is buy the book. Oh, and you like to talk to kids. I heard that you like to talk to kids and kids you want. Tell us about that just before we go.
no, I think children are our future, and I think that children can be inspired to be more than what they would be otherwise. And children are fun, and children are much smarter than anybody thinks.
I agree.
So when I talk to children, I do what you and I do. We converse, we have ideas together, and I hope I could get them excited about things and that I can make their lives better. So